I'm really glad that you tuned into this video. I appreciate it. It's going to be a segmented vase with a solid centerpiece. It's not something you see very often, but I think it complements each other very well, and I like the way it turned out. Please let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Thank you. So for this week's project, I started with a relatively large in diameter maple log, but I didn't think I could get much of a bowl out of it because it's a little short, and that's actually the dimension that would determine how big the bowl could be. So I'm going to not turn a bowl, but rather turn a vase. You can see here that I've taken this log down from over 12 inches in diameter down to about 6. And I did most of that with my roughing gouge, and I am turning between centers. But you can see here the amount of shavings that are coming off, and coming off fairly quickly. This turned very, very easy down to this point. Again, it is wet. It will have to go into my kiln. Okay, let me explain what I'm doing here. This is going to be a vase. I started with a much bigger log, obviously, than what I needed. I'm down to about 6 inches here, and the log was probably 12 to start with. So I got rid of a lot. But I wanted a solid piece, so that's what I had on hand. It didn't take me that long, about a half an hour to get it to this shape here. I've still got to hollow it out. The idea of this is it's going to have a segmented top and a segmented bottom. So instead of segmenting the whole thing, it's going to be solid in between. So really a feature ring on top and a feature ring on bottom. The wood is still wet, so I'm going to go ahead and hollow it out. It did have some end cracking, so you can see here I shortened it quite a bit just to get rid of the end cracking. There's still a little bit right there maybe, and there maybe, but I'm going to leave it, let it dry, and if I have to shorten it up a bit before I segment it, that's fine. It's still fairly tall, given that I'm going to have a feature ring on it out here and down here, so I've still got some height to give. So that's a good smooth surface. Like I say, this is going into my kiln, and it's going to dry because it is wet. So let's go ahead and hollow it out. And I'll leave it about 3/4 of an inch thick. Maybe a little bit less. Now I did all that between centers, I should point out. But I did turn a tenon for my chuck. So now I'm going to mount it in my chuck as I go and hollow the center out. And you can see there the end cracking, because that's the pith. But I'm getting rid of all of that. So that will get rid of all of that right through to the bottom. I'm going to get rid of it. So let's go ahead and get everything fixed up to start hollowing. So here I am using my steady rest. Because this is a vase and it's taller than it is in diameter, and I am hollowing the inside out, I'm using my steady rest, which is homemade. It's just a plywood ring with spokes with wheels on the end. Anytime I go over about 6 inches, then I want to use my steady rest just to take some pressure off the tenon. Okay, let me explain what I've got here. I've got a vase, but it's hollowed out. This end here will match on here, and this end actually goes on this end. So I can mount it both ways. Yeah, like I said, this is still wet, so this is going to go into my kiln for probably a week, and then we'll do some embellishment on it. But for now, it's in good shape. It's smooth on the outside. It's a little rough on the inside, but I will end up cleaning that up once I get it out of the kiln. There are a few radial cracks here. I'm going to put some CA glue on it, and then I will also put some end sealer on both ends, because if it's going to crack, it'll be on the ends. I'm not worried about the rest of it. Like I say, we'll get it inside the kiln. So I mentioned that this wood is wet, so it is going to have to go into my kiln, and I'll post a link here to a video on my kiln. One of my viewers commented that they laugh every time I mention my kiln. Yes, the kiln is a simple device. It's really just an easy bake oven with a light bulb, but it's quite effective at removing moisture fairly quickly. So for this next phase of the project, I'm making the feature ring that's going to go on the top and the bottom, and that's going to be a zigzag Aztec type pattern. For that, I used 3 different types of wood: cherry, maple, and oak. And here you can see how I glued them up. I actually glued a thin strip of oak on top of maple and a thin strip of oak on top of cherry. Then I used my wedgie sled. If you're not familiar with that, there's lots of videos out there on how to make a wedgie sled, but a wedgie sled is used when segmenting to cut your angle pieces so that you get a very tight fit. And you can see here that after cutting these wedges with the sled, I did get a ring that's got very tight joints. So the next step in the process is to take this ring I cut, which right now is just cherry and maple, and insert a second oak piece. And you can see here I'm just gluing on that thin oak wafer to each wedge that I've cut, and then I'll glue those wedges together. When you're gluing these rings together, you just use a friction rub on it so you get lots of glue because you are dealing with end grain, and then you just give it a bit of a rub, and then you can just push them together. It doesn't take a lot of clamping pressure. If your joints are tight, they will pull in. So I'm just constructing this ring, and then once I get it all constructed, all put together, then I will just put an elastic band around the outside to hold everything together. Now, the other thing you may notice is that the oak piece that I put in is not as wide as the wedges themselves were. That's okay, because that inside is going to be cut away anyways. This ring is bigger than what I need, so that will be cut away, so you won't see those gaps when it's all done. So now that I've got the elastic on it, I'm just going over it, pushing it down, and making sure that it's at least flat on the bottom. So I let those rings sit overnight, and then I just flatten them on both sides on a sanding disc on my lathe. I made this. It's mounted on a faceplate, and then it has sheet paper attached to the wooden ring that I made. And I don't want to sand this any more than I need to, because remember, I've got a thin layer of oak on top of the cherry and the maple, and they alternate. So that's fairly thin, so I don't want to sand it down any more than I have to. I just sand it until it's perfectly flat. So I ended up with 3 rings actually. The Aztec type ring, I have 2 of those, one for the top and the bottom, and then I have a solid cherry piece. In order to flatten the vase itself that you see mounted here in my chuck, I use a sanding bar that I have, which is a piece of hardwood that has a piece of sandpaper mounted on it. If I hold this up on the top and it's making contact all the way across, then I know that piece is flat. And once it's flat, then I can go ahead and glue on my feature rings. Whenever you're making a segmented vase or a bowl, you always want to use a solid piece on the bottom, not a segmented ring. Just because of wood movement, you want that base to be a solid piece. So here I am, I've got a solid piece of cherry mounted in my lathe, and I'm just going to put some glue on that and then put my first segmented ring onto that base. You can see here that it's much larger than it needs to be, and I'll just trim that down at the end. I use my lathe to clamp it, so this piece here that I brought up against it is actually got a center mark in it, and I bring that up against the live center and then use that to clamp into place. Once I have that, then I continue along with the rest of the vase, gluing the vase itself along with the other rings as well. So here I'm just trimming the upper ring down to match the diameter of the solid maple piece in the middle. It's relatively straight. There's not much curvature to this ring, but again, I'm just bringing it down to match the diameter. I have to do the same thing on the inside. So again, I use my steady rest. I've got a good joint on the outside, and now I'm just opening up that hole on the inside to match the thickness of the maple vase. And if you remember when I constructed this ring, the oak pieces that are, in this case, are going to be vertical in between the wedges were a little short, but once I opened this hole up, then I ended up cutting all of that away anyways. Now I decided on the very top to make another maple accent ring. So here all I'm doing is taking a piece of maple, cutting it down until it fits very well in the very top of the vase. I did end up mounting this a second time and just trimming it down until it was a better fit. So here's the finished product. I'm quite pleased with the way it turned out. You can see now the maple accent ring that I did end up putting on top of my segmented pieces. Again, you do not want to end off with a segmented piece. You want a solid piece. So for the opening, I do this maple piece. Here you can also see the Aztec pattern with the alternating pieces of oak on top of the maple and the cherry. This is not a segmented piece that I see very much of. A solid centerpiece with feature rings on the top and the bottom. But I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. I think they complement each other very well. Let me know what you think. And again, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe and provide a like.